for this week. Number 5 talks about sentence combining. We've been doing these as bonuses before. We're going to make it count now now that we've had a little bit of practice. So what you want to do is take these 3 simple sentences and combine them into one and only one sentence. I've had several who have made them into 2 sentences instead of 3, but it needs to become one complete sentence. So last week when I talked about this, we talked about appositive phrases, which is where we have a noun. So for instance, I might say, my English teacher, comma, and we want to specify, of course, do you have Mrs. Anderson or do you have Mrs. McKnight? So we'll say my English teacher, Mrs. McKnight, comma, teaches me great things. Okay, so you see what we've done in commas there. We have set this appositive in there that specifies and renames, but it helps to make this information clearer. So you could use an appositive in here if you needed to. This one, however, you're more likely to want to use prepositional phrases. And you'll remember last week we had that whole big list of prepositions you had to go in and put the vowels into and figure them out. So when you use a prepositional phrase again, you start with a preposition, you end with a noun that is the phrase's object, and it provides additional information. So I might say the dog, but which dog is it? There's lots of dogs, right? With the shaggy coat and red collar was lost. Okay, so I've given a lot more information in there, but my sentence, if I go back in and put my prepositional phrase in parentheses, you can see I have a very basic sentence that the dog was lost. But that's a pretty generic sentence. With that prepositional phrase, which has my preposition with, and I actually have 2 objects, coat and collar, I've given you lots more information so you know specifically which dog it is. Okay? So be thinking about that and how we can get rid of some of this redundancy here. We shouldn't need to mention the Sunday really more than once. It's mentioned in all 3 of these sentences. We probably only want to mention it once in our sentence. Okay? We'll describe it then and tell who served it, but we only need to actually mention it once. Then the last thing, verbals. Okay, verbals you started talking about a little bit at least. So verbals are verbs that are acting as other parts of speech. There are infinitives, there are participles, there are gerunds. We're going to talk specifically about gerunds this time. So a gerund is a verb ending in ing that's acting as a noun because it's referring to the act of doing it. So you use gerunds a lot when you talk because you talk about playing basketball, things like that, shooting hoops, writing a paper, talking to your friends, texting, IMing, snapping, whatever. All of those. Those are gerunds. You just didn't know that was what they were called when you were using them. So for instance, I've said here, reading is one of my favorite hobbies. So reading is the gerund. It's acting as the subject of the sentence because it means the act of reading the book. So that's what makes it a noun. Okay? So we've given you 2 sentences down here that I have asked you to go back in and to underline the gerund in each one. Okay? If you have questions about those, send us messages.